So, before we continue on into some more Reform Council insanity that's going to probably take place this week, we've got to rewind back to last week and go back to Nottinghamshire's first county council meeting with Reform in charge. Because if you've already seen my last video about Derbyshire, potato, and their council meeting, how that went, what we're about to witness was, I don't know, Derbyshire's was still quite crazy and chaotic, but apparently what went on in Nottinghamshire was even worse. And I missed this because there was just so much stuff coming out last week. So, yeah, one of the things we've all been predicting on this that might happen was, at what point are these guys going to start saying some crazy, insane stuff? And already on Nottinghamshire, the guy who's now in charge of transport and environment is an outright climate denier, which Reform have tried to play down, even though they've already said they're going to go and end all the net zero stuff in Nottinghamshire. So, Nottinghamshire, good luck. Good luck for that. Hope Nottinghamshire isn't affected by any serious, man-made climate change. But we are going to cover their first council meeting and what went on, because, oh boy, if you think Derbyshire had it, if you thought Derbyshire's got interesting, wait until you see what happened in Nottinghamshire. Anyway, before we continue on into this, please do remember to click the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there's links to the Patreon page, the Buy Me Coffee link, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the YouTube subscriptions down below as well. Thank you very much to everyone who does support the channel. Even if you just click the like and share button, it all helps. Anyway, let's crack on then into this. So, here we are, over to Nottinghamshire Live, with the title of You Haven't Got a Clue. Attacks launched against Reform during their first meeting in charge of Nottinghamshire County Council. Let's get on to this. So, and this is how it starts. It was all surprisingly boring. Then it wasn't. Just teeing you up for what is about to happen. Reform's first full council meeting in charge of Nottinghamshire County Council began, of course, with the very traditional ceremonies of their new chair and vice chair of the council being elected. There were many warm words, and the atmosphere was at least one that would not been out of place at any other county council meeting I've covered in recent years. You can just already tell. You can just already tell the chaos that is about to erupt on here. Then the attacks began. So, Reform's new group of councillors had all apparently now the desire now for an efficient and businesslike meeting, free now from the political slang matches I have now become accustomed to when covering all these occasions. They were, of course, successful in doing so until the Conservative councillors began standing up and launching tirades against the new flock. And I can understand why this is the case. They won an election 4 weeks ago at this point, or 3 weeks ago at the time of this happened. And already there's no policy from these guys. They haven't got any clue about what they're going to do. They've got no clue what they're going to do with adult services, no clue what they're going to do with social services. They're going to make cuts, apparently, but cuts to what? They haven't said. This is not how you should be running things. But they're still, of course, waiting for orders from Nigel Farage's office down in London. This isn't how you should be running local politics. You should have a plan of what you are going to do. But it even gets more funny because you've got to remember some of these, well, 3 of these guys were ex-Conservatives in some cases. So let's get on to what happened then. So the former deputy leader, Bruce Laughton, went through the 7 Nolan principles of public life and then accused Reform of breaking all of them in the election campaign. He said that Reform had made false promises on election leaflets and tried and failed to get former Conservative councillors to join Reform. Again, not surprising, because why? On all their campaign literature, it was all to do with national stuff that councillors just do not have any power to change. John Doddy, the deputy leader, then responded by accusing Councillor Langdon now of sour grapes. John Lee, the former Conservative vice chair of the county council, then attacked Dr. John Doddy in particular, referencing now an incident in which Dr. John Doddy stood up on a chair in a meeting. He said, quote, "It is proven if you stand on chairs and be naughty, you'll become deputy leader of this council." Addressing the whole Reform group, Councillor Lee said, "You have been elected on pledges you can't keep. I don't think you have a clue, to be honest, of what this job entails. For my residents, I hope I am wrong. But I am rarely wrong when it comes to politics. When I first met John Doddy, I thought he was a joke and a clown, and I've been proven right." Oh boy. I'll tell you what, if you want some entertainment from some free entertainment in Nottinghamshire, start going to these county council meetings, because oh boy, if this is just the opening salvo, I think the next lot of council meetings they're going to have are just going to be as good. Anyway, Mick Barton, the new, of course, Nottinghamshire County Council leader, then accused his opponents of Punch and Judy politics. The leader said, "I don't like Punch and Judy politics, but since you've started it, I'll reply to it. You said we haven't got a clue. We've got more professionalism on our side of the chamber than this chamber's probably ever seen." Professionalism? Professionalism in what? Professionalism in what exactly? Just because you have professionalism doesn't mean you'll be a good county councillor. Just because one of your guys was like a doctor doesn't mean he'll make a good politician, or at least a good county councillor in this case. Anyway, it continues. It is certainly, of course, true to be said that the Conservatives did indeed, quote, start it. Reform, up until that point, had, of course, been leading a meeting which involved seeing them trying to run through the business of the day as quickly as possible. This, of course, was a refreshing change from the usual county council meetings, in which councillors sometimes seem to have engaged in a contest to see who can stretch the proceedings now on the longest. Important debates, of course, have to be had, but when considering most Nottinghamshire County Council meetings go on for around 4 hours at most, the idea that some county council meetings need to have been as long as 7 or 8 hours is nonsense. Hey, sometimes it happens. Sometimes meetings overrun. I say this reporter 7 or 8 hours. Sometimes the discussions need to be had. Sometimes these do go on. And hey, if you are waffling so much, then that should be the chair's responsibility, or at least the leader's responsibility, to make sure that members aren't waffling on that long. So you do have and not have a point there, on this. We've all been in overly long meetings. We've all seen this. I've chaired meetings before. I've run it in an AGM style. I've run it in Robert's Rule of Order. Just, call them into line. Maybe these people weren't really good at running meetings, hence why it ran into 7 or 8 hours. Will these guys end up running into that exact same time length? Oh, absolutely. Why are this meeting so short? Because they've got no policy to discuss. They've got no policies. They've got nothing at the moment. So that's why your meetings are probably so short. Anyway, but this continues. During, of course, the meeting, Councillor Barton said that as leader, he would run a, quote, open door policy, even claiming that he had removed all locks on the corridor occupied by himself and his cabinet. What? What? That's just strange. Anyway, aside, of course, from responding to the attacks of the opposition councillors, Reform's first meeting in charge was, in fact, credibly, quote, a staid and business-like affair. Entertainment, of course, only really came in the form of Reform's John Gould, who said that he was elected as the council's new chair, settling, of course, into the role. A few errors, of course, were made, in which one person in the room compared Councillor Gould to Rowan Atkinson's vicar in 4 Weddings and a Funeral, who keeps getting his lines wrong. Councillor Gould even said that at one point the councillors would have had 50 years to discuss a particular item of business. Returning, of course, after the lunch break, Councillor Gould then joked that 50 years went by so quickly. Ultimately, the banter and pleasantries at the council meetings is now the least important aspect of course, council business, which, of course, is most important, of course, policy. And that is how it affects now the multitude of services that thousands rely on. This is why you haven't got anything. That's why the meeting was so short, because they haven't got any policy at all. They've got nothing. None of these councils have that have been run by Reform. Perhaps, of course, the reason much of the atmosphere on Tuesday was now so bland was because, in terms of policy, much remains unclear of Reform's positions in Nottinghamshire. Councillor Barton repeated that it was, quote, still too early to say when questioned now on issues raising now from working on home to immigration. When those positions do become clear, perhaps Councillor Barton will, of course, find himself having to respond to even more Punch and Judy politics. Like I say, they've got no policy at all. What on this? They are ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous, thinking that that's going to be, all right and it's going to be fine for them. But it's really not. It's really, really not for them. Honestly. Like, it is going to go so badly for them. So badly for them. And they've got no policy. And they're still waiting on it. That's why the meetings are so short. But if that's how they respond to that type of criticism, wait until they actually get some proper scrutiny, get some proper questions thrown their way. I think we have really yet to see the true craziness of some of these reform councils. I really do. I think this is only just like the beginning of the beginning. We haven't seen anything yet. So the best really is yet to come on certainly some of these councils, that's for sure. So as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.